Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone on our Tuesday evening class. So today we are going to start discussion on Nectar of Instruction, Shri Upadeshamrita, written by Rupa Goswami and translated and commented on by Srila Prabhupada. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam karoti vācālam pangum langhayate girim Yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinatarine Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyeshwaram Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So once again, welcome everyone. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be starting today onwards discussion on Nectar of Instruction, Shri Upadeshamrita. And this is a very important book. The 4 books which we cover in Bhakti Shastri. First is Shri Ishopanishad, then Nectar of Instruction, Bhagavad Gita, and Nectar of Devotion. So in Nectar of Instruction, Prabhupada writes that this book, Nectar of Instruction, is very important for all of us for a reason that it is guiding us in our devotional activities. So if we read how Prabhupada is writing the commentary on that, let me share my screen. The Krishna consciousness movement is conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas or Bengali Vaishnavas are mostly followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of whom the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan are direct disciples. Therefore, Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Rupa Raghunath Pade Haibe Akuti Kabe Hama Bhajaba Se Yugala Priti. When I am eager to understand the literature given by the Goswamis, then I shall be able to understand the transcendental loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. So, Prabhupada is writing that this Krishna consciousness movement is run directly under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. So, we are known as Prabhupada Anugas, right? The followers of Srila Prabhupada. And the whole Krishna consciousness is run by the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, among whom Rupa Goswami is the primary leader. Because Rupa Goswami was appointed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to write the literatures and to find the places of Krishna's pastimes. Right, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he gave in writing only 8 verses, which we know as, say, Shikshamrita. So those 8 verses, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given very condensed summary of the devotional principles, but he instructed the Goswamis to write the literature. So Rupa Goswami has written many books. He has written Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, and many other books, which are giving in summary the principles of devotional service in our day-to-day life. So here Prabhupada is writing, because this Krishna consciousness movement is run under the guidance of Rupa Goswami, and Rupa Goswami has given this Nectar of Instruction. What are the main purpose of giving this Nectar of Instruction? In a very brief way, Prabhupada writes, first purpose of giving this Nectar of Instruction is to guide our daily activities in devotional service, because we ourselves don't know how to engage in devotional service. How many of you can claim that we know how to perform devotional service, right? We don't know how to engage in devotional service. Many people try to do on their own mind many different type of activities. Some people are just going from one place to another place on yatras all year along. They are going on different places thinking we are very austere and we are engaging in devotional service. But really speaking, we even don't know how to engage in devotional service. So under the guidance of the elevated Vaishnavas, we can understand how to perform devotional service. So the first purpose of Nectar of Instruction is to guide our activities from the morning till evening, whatever various activities we perform, how those activities can be dovetailed in Krishna service. Then the second purpose of Nectar of Instruction is Sri Rupa Goswami is trying to elevate us to the platform of Shuddha Sattva. Right? We know there is mode of ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness, and people act based on their different modes. Most of the people in this world, they are completely under the mode of ignorance, or at most under the mode of passion. So how to gradually elevate ourselves to the mode of goodness and going beyond to Shuddha Sattva. And then how to make us into pure devotees, right? Coming to the level of pure devotional service, how to develop an attitude of engaging in Krishna consciousness. Because in the preface itself, Srila Prabhupada writes that the progress in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the devotee. So what does it mean on the attitude of devotee? Right? Whatever attitude we have, if we take the process seriously, if we have an attitude of gratitude towards other devotees, what we are receiving from them, with that type of attitude, then it becomes easier to progress in devotional service. Otherwise, if we are having the attitude of taking everything for granted, then it doesn't help us to progress in devotional service. So that is the reason Srila Prabhupada is writing in the preface how this Nectar of Instruction is very important. And especially it gives the instruction for a neophyte devotee, because the neophyte devotee need to understand the process of devotional service. We know in devotional service, there are different stages. How we come in the process of devotional services, it starts with Shraddha. Adhau Shraddha, Tatha Sadhu Sangha, Tato Bhajana Kriya, Tato Anartha Nivritti. So this is how the process of devotion service starts, with little faith. So in the beginning, at least we have little bit faith in the process. We may have little bit faith in the person, in the devotee whom we met. So with that faith, it starts. So for example, somebody is going on the street and they see a group of devotees singing and dancing on the street. Many other people may be criticizing them, ridiculing them, but maybe you had that little faith. No, I think this devotee, they are very good people, all right? They are doing the good activity. So you had that little spark of faith and you go cross the road and go talk to that devotee. Maybe you receive a book and so you start reading that book with that little faith. So it starts with that faith. And then with that faith, you come in association of devotee, you start to associate. So many of you, how you came to Krishna consciousness, how you start associating with devotees, maybe you received some invitation through your some other friend to come to a Bhakti Vriksha program or to come to the temple. Your many other friends may have denied the idea that no, we don't want to go there. The Hare Krishna people, they are crazy. They do this and that. They will put many restrictions on you. So they may have many different crazy ideas, but at least you had that little faith. No, I want to give it a try. At least I want to see what they have to offer. So with that little faith, we come in association of devotees. So that is sadhu sangha. Then in association of devotees, we start to engage in the process of chanting the holy name, hearing Krishna Katha. That is bhajana kriya. And as we engage in the process of bhajana kriya, we learn actually how to associate with devotees, because we don't know how to associate with devotees. What are the different way of reciprocation among the devotees? How not to see the devotees with our material vision, material eyes, not with the jati buddhi. So we learn actually how to associate with devotees, engage in the process of bhajana kriya. Then it starts on the process of anartha nivritti, the contamination in the heart that starts to go away, right? The anarthas which are deep hidden in the heart, kama, krodha, lobha, moh, mad, matsarya, judging mentality, criticism mentality. So all those anarthas, they start to go away. And then we come to the stage of nishtha. Our faith becomes solid. So in the beginning, it's called shraddha, right? Adau shraddha. So there is a big difference in shraddha and vishwas. Sometimes we think these are synonymous words. It's the same thing, shraddha, vishwas. Actually, the word uses shraddha and nishtha. Shraddha means when our faith is immature. It's very flickering faith. And nishtha means when your faith has been condensed, is solidified. That is nishtha. So from shraddha, we come to the stage of nishtha. And then we move forward to the stage of ruchi. We develop a taste for engaging in devotional service, for chanting of the holy name, for hearing Krishna Katha, for associating with the devotees. Then we come to the stage of bhava. You develop that emotions in the heart. When you hear some particular pastime of Krishna, when you hear the holy name, when you attend some kirtan, you feel that little ecstasy, some emotions start to develop in the heart. And then the final stage is called prema, when we develop the love for Godhead. So these are the different stages of devotion service. And Nectar of Instruction, actually very wonderfully, it walks us through all these different stages of devotion service, starting from the level of Shraddha. So the first 7 verses of Nectar of Instruction, they are taking us from the level of Shraddha to Nishtha. So there are total 11 verses only in Nectar of Instruction. It's a very small book, only 11 shlokas, 11 verses. But these 11 verses have so much in-depth message hidden in that. So the first 7 verses, they take us from the level of Shraddha to Nishtha, the first 5 stages. And then 8th verse is taking us to the level of Bhava, because the 8th verse is talking about engaging very intimately in chanting, in hearing, in associating with devotees, in Krishna's roop, name, form, qualities, all those things. And then 9 through 11, those 3 verses, they take us on the level of bhava and prema. They are speaking about the glories of Vrindavan Dham. And in Vrindavan, among the whole Braj Mandal, the most important is Govardhan. In Govardhan, the most important is Radha Kund. And the person who takes shelter of Radha Kund is the most glorious person, most glorious devotee. So 9 through 11, they take us to bhava and prema. And in another way to understand, actually the Nectar of Instruction, it talks at a different level also. The first 7 verses are talking on the level of what we call as a Vaidhi Bhakti, right? Vaidhi Bhakti means Vidhi. Vidhi means the method of engaging in devotional service. So we have been given certain principles to engage in devotional service, some particular rules and regulation. So that is called Vedi Sadhana Bhakti. So the first 7 verses are talking at the level of Vedi Sadhana Bhakti. Then 8th verse take us to the level of Raganuga Bhakti, like a spontaneous engagement in devotional service. Then 9 through 11 verses take to the level of Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So that is the progression of Nectar of Instruction, how Nectar of Instruction guide us to progress in devotional service. Now the first verse, moving on to the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. Nectar of Instruction, first verse is talking about controlling the senses, controlling the mind. And how to do that, why it is so important. It says the instruction which are outlined in the first verse, they are meant for beginners for 2 reasons. First of all, so that the new devotee, as a neophyte devotee, or to say the seeker, so that they know what are the positive qualities or what are the qualification for a spiritual master. Right? Because when we want to accept somebody as our spiritual master, we should understand what should be the qualification. So it talk about the qualification for somebody to be considered as a spiritual master. And the second reason why it is so important, so that the seeker can know what is needed to rise to the platform of a seer, how a person can gradually progress to that level to be accepted as a guru. So the first verse, it talks about controlling all the senses. So we'll recite this first verse. vāco-vegaṁ, manasaḥ krodha-vegaṁ, jihvā-vegam, udaropastha-vegam, etān vegān viṣaheta dhīraḥ, sarvām apīmāṁ pṛthivīṁ śiṣyāt. So very, very beautiful verse. And everybody should try to memorize this verse and kind of keep it in the forefront of your consciousness. Not in the background, but in the forefront of the consciousness, always remembering this verse. What does it say? vāco-vegaṁ, manasaḥ krodha-vegaṁ, jihvā-vegam, udaropastha-vegam, etān vegān viṣaheta dhīraḥ, sarvām apīmāṁ pṛthivīṁ śiṣyāt. So the translation given by Srila Prabhupada: a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the action of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genital is qualified to make disciple all over the world. So it's a very long purport given here, and I recommend and encourage everybody to please read the purports on your time. Please read the book also to understand what is really given in purport, how Prabhupada is explaining in detail all these different vegas. So this verse talk about the qualification for becoming a spiritual master. So the different vegas, what need to be controlled. Now, it's not that these are the only criteria for somebody to be considered as a spiritual master, because these are only the initial qualification. If somebody has control on the senses, on the mind, on the tongue, on the belly, on the genitals, so that is a sense control. But apart from that, there are many other positive qualifications needed. As we discussed, a spiritual master, who is it? He should have at least these two minimum qualification. That one, he has full faith in the scripture. He knows the scripture in and out, and he can guide, he gives the guidance based on scripture, and he himself is situated in the absolute truth. He himself is a great devotee of the Supreme Lord. So those are the positive qualification. But what is mentioned here, that's a beginning stage. At least those qualities should be there. Now, it doesn't mean that somebody who can have just the control on these senses, that itself qualifies him to become a spiritual master. So that's a preliminary qualification. Now, another point to understand here, we are talking about these vegas, right? vāco-vegam, manasaḥ krodha-vegam. The first point to understand is the difference in vega and desires. What is the difference in these vegas and desires? Now we are talking about Vega, not Las Vegas. Okay, these are vegas. Vegas means vega, which comes with force. So there are certain things which are the necessities of the body, and there are certain things which is like as a desire. Vega means which immediately comes. You want to do that immediately, right? You have urge to speak something. You have urge to eat something. You have urge to eat something or see something. So those are the different urges. But the desire is something as a long term, that I desire to become a millionaire. So it's not that, okay, tomorrow I want to be a millionaire. So you have a desire which can be in a passive mode. But the vegas, which is urges, those urges which force you to act immediately. Now there are certain vegas, these vegas which are listed here, the urges, those need to be avoided. It's not that one should immediately act based on those urges. What are those urges? Here it mentioned number one, the urge to speak, vāco-vegam, the urge to speak. We will go in more detail one by one among all these urges. Second one is the urges of the mind. Mind keep proposing various different thoughts. Like we have discussed so many times, mind does not stay on one thought at present. Either it's fluctuating in the past or in the future. It doesn't stay on the task at present. And then there is a urge of anger. Sometimes you see something, you have a desire to get that object, and if you're not able to achieve that, it immediately bursts into anger. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, dhyayatoh viṣayan pumsah sanghasteshopajayate sanghat sanjayate kama kamat krodho vijayate. So when we keep meditating on certain object, keep thinking about certain object, we develop an attachment for that object, and then you want to acquire that object. So if you are not able to acquire, what happens? It turns into anger. So that's what the vega, the urge of anger. If somebody is not listening to our thought process, if somebody is not agreeing with our thought process, then immediately it turns into anger. So krodha-vegaṁ. Then jihvā-vegam. Jihvā-vegam is related to the eating propensity. Jihva, the tongue, want to enjoy various palatable food stuff. So because of the unsatisfied tongue, person is running here and there to just satisfy the tongue. And even though no matter how much you are eating, even the belly is filled, but the tongue is not satisfied. So jihvā-vegam, then udaropastha-vegam. Udaropastha-vegam means the urges of the stomach. Stomach want to be filled. And then udaropastha-vegam, the urges of the genitals. So there are certain vegas, the urges, which is mentioned here to be controlled. One should not indulge into those urges. But there are certain urges which are mentioned in the Ayurvedas that one should not try to control those urges. If that urge is there, one should immediately do that activity. So what kind of urges are there which we should not try to control? If somebody has the nature's call, right, urge to urinate, urge to pass stool, so one should not try to control, try to hold on. No, let me wait for another half an hour, 1 hour, then I will go later. Because if somebody, the urge is there to release the foul stuff from the body, that should be immediately acted upon. Because if one is not releasing that, what will happen? It will put pressure on the back, and it will eventually that turn into poison also inside the body, which will lead to many other problems in the body. So those urges should be immediately released. And then if somebody has urge to sneeze, right? If somebody is about to sneeze, you should not hold on. So these type of urges, one should not hold, one should release those immediately. But there are some other urges, like the urge to eat immediately, urge to drink immediately if you feel thirsty. Yes, when you feel thirsty, you should drink. But sometimes there are situations like you are sitting in the class and you are feeling thirsty. It's not that immediately you want to get up and just go and drink water. There should be, those urges are controllable. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 text 14, a very famous verse. Anybody remember that verse? Matrasparshastu kanteya shitoshna sukha dukkha agma payano nitya stam titikshasva bharata. So there also Krishna is saying try to control, right? Because the happiness and distress, they are like the winter and summer season which come and go. So same way, the urges of the senses, they will immediately come and they will try to invoke you that, oh, I want to satisfy. Our senses are like that. Our senses want to engage us in their service. Actually speaking, the jiva is at the highest level, and then comes the intelligence, then mind, then senses. Senses are supposed to be our servant, help us in our progress towards Krishna. But the senses do not act as our servant. The senses act as our master, right? They want to engage us in their service. For example, in scripture, there is an example given of 5 different living entities which represent our 5 senses. So we have 5 karmendriya and 5 jnanendriya, right? 5 knowledge acquiring senses and 5 working senses. So the example given of these 5 senses, how our senses are always leading us towards death. Our senses become the cause of our bondage in this material world. Example is given of 5 different living entities as patanga, matanga, kuranga, shranga, and bhringa. Okay, so what are these 5 living entities? First one is patanga. Patanga means a moth. A moth, as soon as the moth sees the fire or an object of light, the moth is very much attracted towards that source of light and it rushes towards that source of light. And as it gets closer and closer, it's even more attracted, more attached to that. It gets even more closer to that object and it gets consumed by that. So this example of moth is representing the eyes, because our eyes, they see different objects in this world and they get attracted to that. And because of that attraction, then they dictate the mind. Oh, make arrangement. I want to enjoy that object. You are walking on the street, you see some poster of some movie or something, and looking at that poster, now eyes have started giving the indication to the mind, I will like to enjoy in that way. Now you start making arrangement, making plans of when can I watch that movie, where will I find that movie. So our mind becomes controlled by the senses. And the sense, these eyes, they are also the cause of our bondage in this world. So that is example of patanga. Then the second example given is matanga. Matanga means elephant. Elephant represents the sense of touch. Elephant is too much attracted towards the she elephant. So he elephant is very much attracted towards the she elephant. As soon as he sees a she elephant, it runs towards that, try to embrace it and enjoy with the she elephant. So how the hunters, they catch the elephant, they locate a she elephant. So in front of the she elephant, where the she elephant is roaming around, they will dig a pit in that area and cover that pit with the bamboos and all the grass and all. So the he elephant, when it sees that she elephant, it runs towards that, not knowing that there is a pit in between, and it falls into that pit. Now that hunter comes and beats up that elephant with the stick, bind that elephant. So first they bind the elephant with the chain, iron chain, and they starve that elephant. The elephant start losing all its strength, and slowly they're reducing the strength of that chain, and finally they're binding that elephant with the rope. Now that same elephant, which can even kind of break apart the iron chain also, now it becomes completely captured by the hunter. He thinks, I cannot release myself even from that simple rope also. So elephant is captured like that because of his tendency to enjoy the sense of touch. The same way our senses, our sense of touch, our hands, our skin, they want to enjoy, they want to touch the soft object. So in that way, our sense of touch also is always dragging us towards the object of enjoyment. And then the example, the third one given is kuranga. Kuranga means a deer. The deer's weakness is his ears. A deer is very much attracted towards listening to music. And how the hunter catches the deer is they play very nice music on the flute. And as the deer hear that music, it runs towards the direction of that music. So the deer himself is running towards the hunter. As the deer gets more and more closer, the hunter shoots the arrow and kills that deer. So how the deer gives up his life? Because of his attraction towards the music. So deer represents our sense of hearing, ears. We are also so much attracted towards so many different type of music. People want to hear music all day. They are putting earphones in their ears listening to some music, rock music, pop music and whatnot, while walking on the street, while driving car. Every time there are headphones in the ears, and it leads to so many accidents also. So our attraction towards the music, and first of all, what type of music people listen, it is building those further impressions in the mind, those negative impressions, the desire, the tendency to enjoy in this world. People hear some romantic songs and all, and they want to also romanticize in that way, start developing that ideas, how I can enjoy. So our ears are also dragging us to death, dragging us to bondage in this world. The next example is a bhringa. Bhringa means a bumblebee. A bumblebee is trying to enjoy the nectar from different flowers. It goes from flower to flower, taking little bit nectar. Now, if the bumblebee sits on one flower for long, let's say the bumblebee is attracted towards the lotus flower and sits on the lotus trying to extract that nectar from that. In the evening, what happens? The lotus closes, right? And the bumblebee also gets blocked, gets locked up in that lotus flower. And in the morning, when the lotus flower again opens up, the bumblebee is found dead inside that. So the bumblebee, because of its sense of smell, it's so much attracted towards that flower, and ultimately it ends up giving his life. So our sense of smell, the nose, also is dragging us to different objects. We want to enjoy various objects. People are so much attracted to different perfumes and all. These days, the perfume industry, the cosmetic industry is one of the biggest industry. And then the final example is given of shringa. A shringa means a fish. Fish weakness is its tongue. So how the fisherman catches the fish is they throw a bait, and the fish comes to eat that bait, and it gets caught up in the net of the fisherman. Or some of the people, they go to do fishing, they throw a fishing rod, right, the hook inside the water, and on that hook they put a bait, another insect or some meatball, and the fish is attracted towards that bait. As soon as the fish goes to eat that bait, the hook is caught in the tongue of the fish, and the fisherman feels a weight on the hook and immediately pulls the hook out and throws it outside, and the fish out of water dies. So the fish is caught because of her uncontrolled tongue. So in that way, these five entities represent our five senses, how our five senses are always leading us towards death. So coming to our verse here, the different urges which are mentioned here, vāco-vegaṁ. Vāco-vegaṁ means the tendency to speak. People have so much tendency to speak, and sometimes when two people sit together, they want to discuss on so many different ways. They talk about politics, they talk about movies, film stars, sports people. So they are engaged in talking so many different ways. If nothing else, they will try to dig up some past history events and start a debate on that. And slowly that debate turns into argument, that argument turns into blasphemy and criticism, and leads to so many negative emotions, negative feelings among people. So because of our uncontrolled tongue, the tendency to speak, we get into so many problems. And in the purport, Prabhupada is giving the example of a toad, right? A frog is croaking, and as the frog is croaking, it is inviting the snake. How the snake finds the frog? Because of the sound, right? The snake hears that sound and it just goes towards the direction of sound and swallows that snake, the frog. So same way, the people who are unnecessarily engaging in mundane talk, gramya katha, it's called gramya katha, unnecessary talk, the useless gossip, that is, we are wasting our valuable time, and ultimately we are inviting the snake of death. Ultimately the kala, the snake of death, comes and swallows us. So unnecessarily we are wasting our time in mundane talks, not engaging our tongue in service of Krishna. See, if we are controlled by our senses, then our tendency is we are not the master of senses, we are the servant of our senses. We are jihvā-das, Chakshu-das, Karna-das, right? We are not Krishna-das, we are the servant of these senses. We want to become Krishna-das. So here, why this first verse is mentioned here, Rupa Goswami is saying, this verse is to bring people to the level of Goswamis. Go means senses, and Swami means master. So one who is the master of the senses. So either we are the master of senses or we are the servant of senses. So rather than being a Goswami, right now we are Godas. Right? And here another point which Prabhupada is making is Goswami doesn't mean a caste. Sometimes people have that caste or a surname as Goswami. So we are not talking about somebody just using a surname as Goswami. That is a qualification which is mentioned here. Being the master of the senses, coming to the platform of Shuddha Sattva, trying to become the pure devotee of the Lord. So vāco-vegam is the urge to speak, and that unnecessary speak causes our fall down, it causes our bondage in this world, leading to wastage of our valuable time. As Chanakya Pandit says, time is so precious, a moments of time lost cannot be gained back by all the wealth of this world. So vāco-vegam, then manasaḥ-vegam. Manasaḥ-vegam means the urges of the mind. What are the urges of the mind? Mind should be actually controlling the senses, but the senses are right now controlling the mind. The example generally we give off as a chariot. This body is like the chariot. The five senses are the horses on that chariot. And the soul, the living entity, is the passenger in that chariot. Mind is the reins for those horses. And intelligence is the driver. So the five senses are the horses, mind are the reins of the horses to control the horses, to lead them to the right direction. The intelligence is the driver, and the soul, the living entity, is the passenger on that chariot. Because we are given this body as a vehicle to navigate through this world to reach our ultimate destination. But if we don't use this vehicle, we don't navigate this vehicle in the right direction, we will ultimately fall into the ditch, right? If the horses on the chariot are not controlled by the rein, what will happen? If the horses try to run here and there, hither and thither, they will end up falling into a ditch. So the horses are controlled by the reins. So mind is supposed to control the senses, but in our present condition, senses are controlling the mind. They dictate to the mind, make arrangement for me to enjoy. The tongue is dictating, I want to enjoy the palatable foodstuff. I want to eat rasgulla, kachori, samosa. So how to make that arrangement? And the ears are demanding some nice music to hear. Eyes are demanding some nice scenes to watch. So mind is being controlled. And mind has so many stored impressions. Mind has so many stored desires. But how to control the urges of the mind? By keeping the mind filled with the thoughts of Krishna. Right? If our mind is filled with the thought of Krishna, then it does not go here and there. The example is, if you have a lot of wealth in the home and you want to protect your wealth, you keep your door closed, right? And keep it closed, locked from inside, so that the thieves cannot enter the house, cannot steal. But on the other side, other situation is you keep the door open. Now, once the thief has entered inside the house, now you're trying to drag them out of the house. So which situation is better? Trying to keep them out of the house in first place, or trying to kick them out once they have already entered inside the house? So our senses and mind are like that. We should be controlling our mind by keeping it on Krishna, by engaging in the thoughts of Krishna. So the mind does not go on other thoughts. It does not let the senses loose. Because once the senses are let loose, then it's very difficult to control the senses. So the senses are compared like a snake also. The senses are very dangerous, as a snake with the poisonous teeth is very dangerous. But if the snake is having no teeth, if the poisonous teeth of the snake has been removed, then you can put on that snake in your neck also and it's harmless. So same way our senses are. Our senses, uncontrolled senses, are like the poisonous snake which can bite. But when the mind is controlled and mind is controlling the senses, then those senses are becoming like a harmless snake. So mind should be controlled. And how to control the mind? By filling it with positive thoughts, engaging it in Krishna conscious activities. If our mind is idle, what it is said, idle mind is devil's workshop, right? Then the mind will go on so many different thoughts. But if our mind is already filled with positive thoughts of Krishna consciousness, then it will not go on different thoughts. Like a glass. If your glass is already filled with water, now you try to put more water on that or some oil drop on that, what will happen? It will just slide down because the glass is already full. So same way, if our mind is already occupied in thoughts of Krishna, in activities of Krishna, then the demands of senses will not burden the mind. They will not bewilder the mind. So that's why positive engagement, constant engagement is very important. Sometimes we think, oh, too many activities, I've been bombarded by these activities every day, something or other. But that is good to keep our mind and senses controlled, because someday when it is free, when you are free, what will happen? Then you think of extra sleep, then you think of watching something on the TV, then you want to enjoy in some other way, right? So empty mind or idle mind is devil's workshop. So controlling the mind by positive Krishna conscious thoughts, Krishna conscious activities. Then comes the next urge, vāco-vegaṁ, manasaḥ, krodha-vegaṁ. So the third vega mentioned is anger, urges of anger. Now, can the anger be eliminated altogether? It is very difficult to give up anger. But Prabhupada says in the purport, actually the anger can also be utilized in Krishna service. One may say, see, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself also became angry when he heard about that Nityanand Prabhu has been hit by a pot. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ran towards the scene and he wanted to punish Jagai and Madhai. He was angry. So then the devotee may ask the question, the Lord himself become angry, then what is the point? How can we control the anger? But the point to understand is, if somebody is trying to harm ourselves, then we should try to tolerate, try to forgive, not become angry on that. But if we see other devotee being harmed, if somebody is trying to criticize other devotees, harm other devotees, then we should not sit quiet and thinking, oh no, we should tolerate. Then we should act actually to protect the other devotee. Then we can utilize the anger in service of Krishna. Like Hanumanji. Hanumanji also used his anger in service of Lord Ramachandra. Hanuman went to Lanka and he burned up the whole city of Lanka in service of Lord Ramachandra. Arjuna also used his anger in service of Krishna. Arjuna earlier said, I do not want to fight. But Krishna told, no, Uttishta Bharata, Vigraha Yuddhascha, you have to fight. And to fight, can Arjuna fight without having anger? To fight with somebody, you have to express anger. So Arjuna also used anger in service of Krishna. So anger also has a positive use in service of the Lord, in service of the devotees. So we should control the urge of anger for our own agenda. We should not be doing as a tit for tat. Oh, he did something wrong to me, I am going to show him. What does he think of himself? I'm going to do worse to him. So we should not have that kind of mindset trying to harm others. But we should be ready to serve the Lord if we need to express anger also in that. Then comes the urge of tongue, jihvā-vegam. Jihvā-vegam. What is the difference in vāco-vegam and jihvā-vegam? Both are related to tongue only, right? But tongue has two functions. Tongue is considered as karmendriya also, and tongue is considered as jnanendriya also. When we are using the tongue to speak, that function is karmendriya. We are doing work with the tongue. And when we are using the tongue to taste something, that is a jnanendriya, to drive some understanding, right? You taste something, you understand, oh, this is sweet, this is salty, this is hot, this is cold. So the tongue has two functions. The first function of tongue, vāco-vegam, was related to karmendriya. So utilizing that function of tongue not to speak unnecessarily, but using it in service of Krishna. The second function is jihvā-vegam, is referring to the function of tongue as tasting. The tongue want to taste some palatable food, different items. People go here and there trying to taste new things, right? People find out, oh, today is a new restaurant opening in Norway, in Canton, so let's go to that new restaurant and we want to enjoy in that new restaurant. People drive for hours sometimes to go to some fancy restaurants to eat food there. So our tongue is uncontrolled. Actually, it says one can control all other senses. But if the tongue is uncontrolled, then all other senses will also not be controlled. You can temporarily control other senses, but as long as tongue remains uncontrolled, it's not possible to control other senses. The example given is in Uddhav Gita, 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Lord Krishna is describing to Uddhava, and in that actually he's speaking through the example of Avadhuta Brahman, how Avadhuta Brahman is narrating his 24 gurus. And when he's narrating about this guru of fish, he's talking about this jihva. Our tongue is so uncontrolled. And the yogis, they try to control the tongue by performing austerities. Not just the tongue, all the senses. The yogis, they try to control their senses by nirahar. Nirahar means by not giving the food to the senses. Food we understand by eating only, right? The food which goes into the belly. So that is the food for the tongue and the belly, but every sense has their food. Eyes have their food, ears have their food. So the yogis, they try to control their senses by not giving them the food of their senses, by depriving them of the food. In that way, the senses can be controlled temporarily. One cannot control the senses permanently in that way. Because if somebody goes for some austerities for 1 month, 2 months onto some mountains, hills, as long as he is staying there, he is performing some austerities, controlling senses. When he comes back, again, the senses want to enjoy in different ways. Somebody may do some fasting, and by fasting, our senses become weak. And in that way, it feels like, oh, I have controlled my senses. But soon, the senses, as soon as one is done with fasting, the fast is over. Now they want to again enjoy. The example actually to understand is in Kartik month or Adhik Mas, Purushottam month. Sometimes the devotees do many austerities. And when they take Kartik vow, they take some type of vows of, some devotee may say, for this whole month, I don't want to eat sweets. Or I'm going to eat only 1 meal a day. So when we are performing these type of austerities, yes, temporarily it controls the senses, but especially tongue, jihva, is so ferocious that as soon as you try to cut down the food for the jihva, later on it becomes even more uncontrolled and it want to enjoy even bigger level. So the devotees may fast for 1 month from sweets, but as soon as the Kartik month is over, what happens? Then they indulge in eating sweets. Then they want to eat sweets by taking a compound interest also. So for 30 days, I have not eaten sweets now, and one day, 30 sweets in one day, right? Quota of 1 month filled in one day. So that's a eating with compound interest now. So jihva, the tongue, is so ferocious. Just sense of tongue is uncontrolled. If not controlled, all other senses become uncontrolled. So how then the senses can be controlled? It says, unless one engages in service of Krishna, It's not possible to control all the senses, especially jihva. That's why the devotee, they say, for devotees, we are not telling that, okay, perform externally some austerities or not give the food of the senses. But we say, take the food in a nominal way, in a regulated way. So we eat Krishna prasad in a regulated way. In that way, all our senses become controlled, because we are supposed to control or utilize our senses in service of Krishna. Rishikesha Rishikena Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Engaging all our senses in service of Rishikesha, who is the master of senses. That is devotional service. That is bhakti. So unless we engage our senses in service of Krishna, they cannot be controlled. Right? So then same way comes udaropastha-vegam, the belly, the stomach want to be filled with so much food stuff. And if somebody eats more, overeats, that leads to many problems. And then genital. So if somebody is having uncontrolled tongue, overfilled belly, then the genitals are also uncontrolled. The urges of sex desire is also because of too much eating and too much of tasting through the tongue. Because all three, jihva, udar, and upastha, the tongue, belly, and genitals, they are in a straight line. So the jihva and udara, they put pressure on the genitals also. So all these urges need to be controlled. Because if we are not controlling the tongue and belly, what happens is the overeating leads to many problems. So many diseases are actually because of overeating. So people, the karmis, they don't try to control the senses. They have no concept of controlling the senses. Their concept is enjoy as much as you can, as long as you can, till it lasts, right? So they want to enjoy. So there is no concept of controlling the senses. And because of so much overindulgence in enjoyment, it leads to so many problems, so many diseases also. So bhog se rog hota hai. That's how they say, bhog se rog hota hai. And when they get disease, jab koi rog hota hai, then they want to do yoga. Then they want to do some yoga to cure from that disease. So first they want to enjoy, then get disease, then they want to do some yoga to cure from that disease. And why they want to do yoga? So that we can do bhoga again. We can enjoy again. Again they enjoy, again some other type of disease comes. So if we can cut down our eating, actually, that can also remove so many diseases. The main cause of disease, people, see, poor people, they do not fall as much sick as the rich people fall sick. Because poor people, they don't have enough to eat. Less eating means less disease. So the karmis, they do not try to control the senses. Now jnanis and yogis, they try to control the senses by external efforts on the strength of their little knowledge, or by performing some austerities. They want to control the senses. But sometime, for some duration of time, they can forcibly control the senses. But how long that can go on? Ultimately, they again end up into some sense enjoyment. And the devotees, they don't externally have to control the senses, because their senses are engaged in service of Krishna. And when the senses are engaged in service of Krishna, they have no scope of going here and there for worldly enjoyment. So in the beginning of purport of this verse, Srila Prabhupada is commenting about Parikshit Maharaj and Shukdev Goswami. Parikshit Maharaj is asking this question to Shukdev Goswami about the process of atonement. Right? People do so much of atonement. What is the use of atonement? Because atonement means temporarily controlling the senses. So first they commit some sinful activity by engaging in these urges of the senses, and then they want to atone. But what is the point of atonement? It's like the prisoner, he goes to the jail. He knows that if I commit some sinful activity, some wrong activity, I will be punished. I will be caught by the cops and punished. But even though after knowing that, he's not able to control his senses and end up committing that wrong activity and ultimately get punished. So some people, by just hearing that this activity is wrong, I should not be doing this activity, they refrain from that. Some people, they see others doing and they see others getting punished, then they refrain. Oh, I should not do this. Some people, they have heard about it, they have seen others doing and getting punished, they themselves has done it. After doing it, they get punished, then they refrain. But there are still other category, they have seen, they have heard, they have done it, punished, still they do not refrain, still they do not change their ways. So atonement process is also like that. People do sinful activity, then they go to holy places to take bath in the holy rivers, thinking I want to remove the sinful reaction, I want to do some prayaschit. But what is the use of such prayaschit? If the senses still remain uncontrolled, you will again end up engaging in those activities. Such type of atonement is like the bathing of the elephant. Elephant goes to take bath, comes out of the river and again throws dust on its body. Then again he goes to the river and take bath, again comes out and throws dust. So what is the point of such bathing? And Prabhupada quotes the example of people go to churches also and they have the system of they in front of the father, they what is confession, right? So they confess that, oh, I did this wrong activity in the week. So they go, they pay to the father or in the church something and they do the confess. There is a joke. One person went to the padri every week. He will go to the father, pay $50 and do the confession. So one week he went and he paid $100. The father asked, why $100? You always pay $50. He said, next week I will not be able to come. So I'm confessing this week today only in advance. So what is this advanced confession is like a mockery of this whole system. So same way the atonement, the process of atonement is a mockery on the system as long as our senses remain uncontrolled. Because we will end up indulging in those activities again. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked this question. See, I heard about sthita pragya, somebody who is self-controlled. How does that self-controlled person speak? How does he sit and how does he walk? So what does these three questions means? Sthita pragya, how does he speak, means how does he engage in speak? If somebody has spoken to him in a very nice way, polite way, glorifying him, or somebody has spoken to him in angrily, right? Spoken in an angry mood to him. How does he react in both situation? Or how he engages his vāco-vegam, how he controls his urge of speak. Then how does he sit, means how he control all his senses, all his karmendriya, his legs and hands and ears and eyes, how he controls, withdraw him in the world. And then how he walks means how he engages all his senses while being in the world. So the example in the answer, the example given is of a tortoise. The tortoise withdraws his limb inside his shell when he sees some danger. And then he takes out his limbs and walks around. So same way a person, how to live in this world, we should withdraw our senses from the external distractions. And when we come in association of devotee, when we come to temple, we should engage all our senses in service of Krishna. So in many temples, you see there is a tortoise. In many historical temples, right, Vedic temples, outside there is a tortoise, as a stone carved tortoise. So what does that signify? A devotee should also be like the tortoise who withdraws its senses, its limbs inside the shell, and as the time needs, the need comes, he extract out, he brings out his limbs out of the shell. So in the temple, we are jumping, we are dancing, we are singing, we are watching the deities, we are serving in so many ways, we are hearing Krishna Gatha, we are speaking, glorifying the Lord in the Kirtan. So we are engaging all our senses. We are using our senses, taking them out and using in service. And outside the world, when we are outside, when you are at your workplace or walking around or driving through, you see many billboards, many different distractions. So in that way, not paying attention to all that and just stay focused. You are listening to your maybe some lecture, some kirtan, or in that way, keeping your focus on Krishna. So that is the example, because controlled senses earlier, if we can control the senses earlier, it's easier to remove the impressions, the hard impression which build on our consciousness. A very wonderful example to understand is a pot. So the last example I will quote and we will end it here. So the pot, so somebody who does the cooking, they can understand it very easily. So when you cook in the kitchen, after cooking, from the big pot, you transfer it into the small serving bowls or something. But if the cooking pot, you just leave it there and it dries up, whatever was sticking all around, it will become so dry up, and the person who is doing pot washing later, it's so difficult to clean the pot later, right? If you just leave that pot to dry like that. But if you remove the food stuff from that pot and soak that pot with water, take a water tap and just fill that pot with water and just leave it like that, and half an hour, 1 hour later, when you scrub it, everything will come out so easily, right? It will be so easy to remove. So same way, our senses are like that. If we can not engage the senses into the worldly things, if we control our senses and put them, soak them in Krishna conscious activities, all the conditioning which we have on our mind, our consciousness, that can be removed easily. But if our senses are left unattended, uncontrolled in this world, then the conditioning becomes more and more solidified. And later on, it becomes very difficult to remove that conditioning. That's why engaging in devotional service early on in life is important. People say bhakti is a old age thing, retirement program. But by the time of old age, by the time of retirement, so much conditioning people accumulate, it's very difficult to give up that conditioning because it has been solidified. So sooner we engage our senses in serving Krishna, it's easier to keep that on the right track. So this particular verse is for the initial stage of devotion, how to control our senses rather than letting them loose in this world, engaging them in service of Krishna early on. So very, very wonderful verse. Please read the purport in detail. vāco-vegaṁ manasaḥ krodha-vegaṁ jihvā-vegam udaropastha-vegam etān vegān yo viṣaheta dhīraḥ sarvām apīmāṁ pṛthivīṁ śiṣyāt. So somebody who is able to control all these urges, he is suitable to make disciples. He is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So this is a preliminary qualification for a guru. There are many other positive qualifications which we will read and hear as we progress reading through the scriptures. Okay, so thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
So if anybody has any question, any comment, please feel free to ask, feel free to share. Okay. Nobody has any question?
Thank you, Prabhuji. It was very nicely explained, very nice session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Thank you for joining.
No, Prabhuji, it was excellent, excellent explanation. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
I have a vāco-vegam problem anyway today.
Hare Krishna, Suresh Prabhu. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you so
Hare
much for
Krishna.
amazing class, Prabhuji. It was really good.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji,
Mataji.
I was just wondering, I missed some point like stages of devotional service. I missed 1 or 2 stages. And in the Vegas also, I missed 1 or 2 things. So is it like we can get recording or some notes or something?
Yes, the recording will be posted on YouTube soon,
Okay.
in a day or two.
Okay, Prabhuji.
So
Sure. Thank you,
the
Prabhuji.
stages of devotion, there are 9 stages. Starts with Shraddha, a flickering faith. Adho Shraddha, tatha sadhu sangha, tato bhajana kriya, tato anartha nivritti. Then Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, Prema. These are the 9 stages of devotional service. So we all start with a little faith, right? In the beginning, we have a very tender faith. So we start with that faith, then we start to associate with devotees, we engage in the process of chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam, then decreasing of unwanted attachments or the vikaras in the heart, anarthas, they start to go away. Then our faith becomes solidified, steadiness comes, then the taste develops, then we develop attachment, asakti, and then bhava, emotions develop, and then comes to the stage of prema, pure love for Krishna. So these are the 9 stages.
Okay, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, Asakti and Ruchi are same?
Asakti is after ruchi, right?
After
First you
Ruchi.
develop ruchi in something,
Okay.
and then you develop attachment with that.
Ji, Prabhuji. And Nistha is same as Vishwas, right, Prabhuji?
Yes, that's why I explained in the beginning, there is a difference in Shraddha and Nishtha, and we call all these 3 words, Shraddha, Vishwas, Nishtha. We
Okay.
generally think those all same thing as a
Same.
synonym to each other.
Mhm.
But there is a subtle difference there. Shraddha
Okay.
is very tender, komal. Shraddha,
Okay.
today we have Shraddha in something, tomorrow you have Shraddha in something else,
Ji,
right?
Prabhuji.
Today you may have faith in one person, one devotee, tomorrow you may have faith in somebody else. Our Shraddha keep changing.
Mhm.
Nishtha, on the other side, is solidified faith.
Okay.
So that is once, then you are at the fully steady, that you is unshakable. So
Okay.
Shraddha is shakeable, Nishtha is unshakable.
Okay, Prabhuji. Sure. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Hare
Prabhuji,
Krishna.
I think the same thing I also missed, this progression, Shraddha, Nishtha, Suchi.
I will post that verse in the group, the 9 stages of devotion service, so everybody can read that. So the 9 stages of devotion service and how the Nectar of Instruction 11 verses actually gradually take us from beginning till prema. That is the
Yeah,
flow
that
of
is the
Nectar of
other part.
Instruction
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, okay. That was my other part of the question. How does that relates to the Nectar of Instruction progression?
Yeah, maybe we'll discuss again, summarize in the next class also, how the 11 verses of Nectar of Instruction gradually take us through these 9 stages of devotional service. Maybe I will put together a couple of slides and show those slides.
That will help, yes, Prabhu. Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice class, Prabhu.
Yeah, so my suggestion, recommendation is everybody should be very clear in Shraddha and Nishtha. What is the difference in Shraddha and Nishtha? Or what do we understand by Vishwas? So there is a prayer actually glorifying Parvati or Sati and Shiva, Shraddha Vishwas Rupino, right? Vande. So Parvati or Sati is compared as Shraddha and Lord Shiva is compared as Vishwas. Because Sati's faith was shakeable. She could not believe that Lord Ramchandra is the Supreme Lord. She got that doubt. But Shiva, he is fully has a unshakable faith in the Lord. He drank poison also, having full faith in the name of the Lord, chanting the name of Ram and drinking poison. तो उसके लिए बोलते हैं बाहर से आया विष और अंदर से आया राम, और विष और राम मिले तो क्या हुआ? विश्राम. Lord Shiva is in complete peace. So Shiva is personification of Nishtha, Vishwas, and Sati is personification of Shraddha. In Ramcharitmanas, Tulsidas ji write that verse, praying to Shiva and Sati, Shraddha Vishwas Rupino. Okay.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And so we'll end it here.